Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. I'm Jay Warmke.
I'm Annie Warmke.
And today we're going to talk about deciding to become a sustainable engineer, or of all the things to choose, Nicholas, why did you pick this one? And Nicholas I'm referring to is Nicholas Anderson, who is our guest here. And Nicholas, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us just a wee bit about yourself.
So I'm Nicholas. I've been an intern with Blue Rock Station for most of the summer. Ever since I was younger, I always liked dismantling things. Andy can tell you I still like to dismantle things.
Or smash.
Do you ever actually put them back together?
Only if I can figure it out.
Uh-huh.
But so that's really how I got into engineering. I like taking things apart, looking at what makes them tick and why they work the way they do. And so that's carried on to now. So I study engineering at the University of Dayton and hopefully minoring in sustainability, energy, and the environment.
Hopefully. You better.
Hopefully.
We're investing in you. You got to do it. You don't have a choice now. So, well, what made you decide to be an intern? Because I remember you were very positive on the phone, but then when you showed up, you looked like a deer caught in the headlights. So what made you decide you wanted to do that?
So the University of Dayton has what's called the Ethos program. So they send engineers domestically and internationally to different communities that kind of encourage sustainability or work to make a more sustainable environment. And as soon as I heard about that, I knew that was something I was interested in, something I wanted to pursue. So I looked into different communities that they were sending students to domestically. When I saw Blue Rock Station and that I'd be living outside and really in community with the people that I would be working with, it caught my eye, and so that's why I talked to you on the phone and showed up.
Well, at UD, do they ever really define what sustainability is? Because that's one of those terms people throw around there like sustainability, but it probably means something different to every single person who hears the word. So I guess I would ask you, what did that mean to you when you first heard it?
So they really don't define sustainability. I mean, it could be anything from helping people get clean water to, I know some of my friends are helping to build wind turbines, but they really don't define it. They just said sustainability.
Well, one of the things that I know is interesting is the idea of this being a lifestyle instead of just this one thing. So the new catchphrase is net zero, and we say lifestyle. So they'll say net zero building or net zero business, but it's a lifestyle. And
we have net zero income. That's how we define it. So.
Okay, not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the thing that interests me when I talk to young people that want to come and be an intern is how they can see it, the bigger picture, that it is really about lifestyle. And sometimes that's just a little too shocking. But most of the time, people are pretty enthusiastic about it. But it's when you have to go to the outhouse privy that the reality sets in, isn't it?
Well, yeah, like you said, when I showed up, I was a little taken back when you gave me the quick tour of everything that was going to be happening. But now it's become just what it is. I mean, that's how you do things. That's a way of life, and it's become almost normal.
Almost normal.
Almost.
Because you keep going out, and the real world's out there. That's right.
Well, that becomes abnormal then.
Yes, that's right. So what do you feel like you learned? So the sort of some basic things that you've learned by wanting to pursue being a sustainable engineer and living and working with us.
So one of the largest things I've learned, and you mentioned it one day when we were picking greens in the garden, was how the way of life here is really honest. If you want to have greens for lunch, if you want to have a good salad, then you've got to go out to the hoop or what have you, and you've got to pick the greens, which they must be planted at the right time of the year. For the shower, if you want to have a warm shower, you got to make sure you take it at the right time of the day. You got to make sure it's filled up with water. So really just you're really held accountable for your actions and what you do, and every action you make has an impact.
Yeah, I always think that it's when people say it's difficult living sustainably or it's difficult living the way we live, to me it's not difficult. You just have to be aware
Yeah.
And the example I like to give is it's no harder to hang up your clothes in a rainstorm than it is to hang it out when the sun is shining. It's just more effective when the sun is shining.
That's a crazy example.
I know. Well, it is harder to hang it up in the rainstorm. Well, my examples don't have to make sense.
That one did not.
To
That
anyone
one,
except myself.
Okay, well, there you go. There you go. Because that one was like lost on me. Whoa, right
As
over.
if I would hang up clothes. Come on, really?
Yeah. Well, maybe in the rain. So, anyway, well, I think I found it interesting when just along this line, but when you were talking about going to or having a meeting with other people who are in the same kind of program, but they're in different parts of the U.S. And just talk a little bit about your discussion as far as their day and their life during the summer versus yours.
These are other people in Ethos, right?
Yeah.
Other people
Yeah.
doing internships.
Yeah,
And they're
around
just
the U.S.
Yeah, just domestically. So we had a talk with all of them. We did like a video chat, and there were 6 others, I believe. And so they all kind of explained what they did first. So it was very interesting to hear kind of what they're up to. I would say what they're doing is more along the lines of the academic definition of engineering. So they do a lot of things with, Excel and spreadsheets and analyzing data and putting things into SolidWorks and designing, different kinds of pieces or things that they're going to use.
Yeah, the goats are really bad at Excel.
Yeah,
They're more VisiCalc, kind of multiplan. They're Apple as opposed to
They're all
Macs.
about the outcome.
Right.
Yeah. But also a lot of them, so some of them don't actually live with the people that they work for. They may work for like a lab or something, and so they'll live somewhere else. And they do their own shopping, which, a quick tangent on that, they're all so proud of how they live so sustainably and how little plastics they use. And then they tell me that they go and they do all their shopping at Walmart. And, well, I don't know, that just kind of shocked me. A lot of them have work days, so they work from 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday. And then, they maybe go hiking or camping or something like that. But at Blue Rock, it's very different because I don't work 9 to 5, and when 5 o'clock comes around, I'm not like, oh yay, it's 5, I can finally be done working. I just kind of keep doing whatever I'm doing, and I enjoy that. The weekends are the same. It's all kind of work and play and enjoyment all mixed into one thing. So the work doesn't seem like to weigh you down. It just is what it is, and that's how you're making a living.
There's no watching the clock.
There's no watching the clock.
Or
Well,
there's
it's
no
living-
clock usually.
But it is living life, and that's the difference. So everything is about preparing for winter or preparing for summer.
Well, I heard one guy that when they ask him, what do you do for a living? And he goes, I live.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I do for a living.
Yeah, that's good. So I know you've been doing a lot of different things, and I know recently you had some observations about what you thought about the government. And
Yeah, you were becoming a teacher, right? You went back to
Yes.
UD and you taught people. And did they call you Mr. Anderson?
No, they didn't.
And you
No.
made them sit down,
No,
Listen, people, you're wasting my time. Sit down.
No, we treat them as peers, or at least to the best of our ability. But yeah, so this past week I went back to the University of Dayton to lead a program kind of to help first-year students with the transition to college and kind of quell their fears a little bit. But one thing we did is we went on a tour. We called it Finding the Assets of Dayton, so the actual city. And the first thing we did was we stopped at City Hall and we had an opportunity to ask questions to the commissioner, the city commissioner. And I had heard that Dayton is a food desert, and with my experience here, I'm very interested in food and kind of how that fits into the community. So I asked him, I've heard that Dayton is a food desert, and what kind of programs do you have in place? And the first thing he did was he told me that Dayton is not a food desert, and he tried to downplay that it's really an issue. I mean, he conceded that, yes, food is a problem, but he attempted to assure me that there's no food desert and that people are getting food. And then later in the day, we went out to urban gardens. We went to some homeless shelters, places where people actually are
Living life
Yeah, actually living life.
in the real world.
And I asked them the same question. I've heard the city is a food desert. And they said, oh, absolutely. We struggle very much with food. It's very challenging to get the people in poverty to eat fresh fruits and vegetables.
Or have access.
Yeah, or know what to do with them. I mean,
Yeah.
they may have a cabbage, but that's useless because they're like, oh, good, what do I do with it?
Well, was your impression that the city commissioner was spinning it, or that he was simply unaware? It wasn't his reality.
So he told me to look at the numbers. He said, I encourage you to go look at the numbers because that's what he looks at. He's very data-driven. And I think that's interesting. He told me to look at the numbers, and then the urban farmers told me to look at the people. They said, look around you. It's clear to see that there is a food problem and people are struggling. So I just thought that was interesting that he's looking at the numbers and the people involved in the community are looking at the other people.
Well, in numbers, like in the engineering program, of course, that's where you're directed. I always like to say with statistics, on average, Bill Gates and I are very, very wealthy, But in reality, these numbers are skewing.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are doing very well. Others, maybe more than the ones doing well, are doing poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so what does that translate to for you? Because you're looking at a lot of different ideas and a lot of different topics like transportation and how people's lifestyles play into like net zero lifestyle and food and things. But when you go off like that and have these experiences, how do you think that influences being a sustainable engineer?
I think it's really about looking at the people, and because as an engineer, you're very data driven, and you want to look at how is this affecting this process or whatnot. And I think it's encouraged me to look at the people. So who is this product affecting, and in the outcome of what it does for people, and in what it costs to be produced or made, or
The true cost.
yeah. So really, I think it's encouraged me to look at how the people are involved and how it will affect a community.
One of the things we've been focusing on, you and I directly, is renewable energy. That's one of these areas. When you talk about sustainability, I know we focus a lot on food here because we've come to believe food is the heart of sustainability, but renewable energy is sort of the poster child, It's
Yeah.
the more visible thing. So you've been involved with a couple of builds with solar. So what's been your feeling on that?
I didn't really know that solar and renewable energy was making such a big impact. I didn't know it was becoming so big. I guess in the academic world, they're still somewhat focused on natural gas and all those. But coming here and seeing how big and how much it's going to make an impact, the renewable energies and especially solar has been so interesting. And going on a build and actually installing solar panels and seeing they're not really all that complicated was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely not rocket science.
Yes.
Well, you are listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke and Nicholas Anderson today, reminding you that it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
And thank God.
Yep, thank God. So it may not be the end of the world. It's the beginning of the world for you, Nicholas.
For me,
right?
oh yeah.
Yes.
I'm getting in at just the right time.
Making all these lifestyle choices and starting to steer your ship in a certain direction, and now you're being pointed. Do you think your experience this summer has made you more adamant about going into sustainability, or you're going, man, outdoor toilets are not where it's at?
Oh no, it's absolutely moved me more towards sustainability. And if they had a major at Dayton for sustainability, I'd probably do it, which I think they're getting to soon, but the minor will have to suffice for now.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we have done lots of is deal with food. Because I thought you were going to say, like, lots of times you're thinking, oh, the next meal, this is what's on the menu.
Yeah, he doesn't look at the clock. He
No,
looks
he looks at the menu.
Look at
It's
his
like,
stomach.
forget it. We know it's like, hey, his stomach's going, wow. And then he's saying, but there's pizza on the menu or whatever. Anyway, but so one of the things that we've talked a lot about is labels, not just about food, but other things as well. And what do you think how do you think that has influenced you about things?
So especially this past week when I was in Dayton, a lot of the food we ate was packaged and, stuff you find at the grocery store in the middle of it. And so I picked up all the packages basically that I could get my hands on to look at the back and see what I was actually eating. And like you had said, it's a lot of corn. It's corn and sugar. And while it may not say corn and sugar, they've got all kinds of fun names for it that are hard to pronounce. But generally, the first 5 ingredients somewhere in there is corn syrup, some kind of sugar. And it's in things you wouldn't expect, like pretzels. There's a whole bunch of sugar in there. And for me, that was big, looking at that and saying, wow, maybe I should not eat this, and look at maybe I should eat an apple or something that I know where it has come from.
Well, I would be curious because for me, it was quite a shock or an awareness after eating food that you've grown yourself, living the way we live, just how bad the other food tasted. I mean, did you have that same perspective that the food is bland, uninteresting, always a bit of a disappointment?
Yeah, I would say that. And it's really just all the same. A lot of the times you end up, you're like, wow, this just tastes the same as what I ate for breakfast.
Well, because of sugar and corn.
Yeah, exactly. So it all kind of tastes the same.
I thought it was because I'm a really great chef.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all agreeing on that for sure. Yes.
Wow, you forgot to say that, but not that I would ask you to say that. So, well, one of the things that we talk about is the influence of local. And I know that's had a big impact on you as well. So maybe you could say something about that.
Yeah, especially in the city of Dayton where they need a lot of help with kind of, building their community and getting people to stick together. Buying local, I feel, is so huge. At a lot of the farms, they have locally produced food, and they've got so much of it. But because it's cheaper to buy your fruits and vegetables from, big markets that are all from California, people are choosing not to do that. But if you buy the fruits and vegetables or other produce locally, that money is going directly to those people, and they're going to be able to use it a lot more to further whatever projects they're having. And that money you give them, it's going to come right back to you and making the community a lot better and a lot stronger.
I know right at the beginning when you first came, we had a dinner where people brought food, and it was supposed to be like vegetarian, vegan kind of food. And so some people came, and they had really wonderful kids, and we sat around this table, and you had I found a very interesting observation, and I was surprised by what your thoughts were about that evening.
So first of all, I got to say the food was excellent.
But there it goes. There's my example again, I'm telling you.
Well, we all have it tattooed on our arm.
Yeah.
Annie is an excellent cook, and we're all looking.
But yeah, well, first of all, it was interesting to see. I had never seen most of those foods. I didn't know you could make zucchini noodles or all kinds of interesting things. But what I found really interesting was how real the conversations were that were had at the dinner table. Even with the kids there, I don't know if they could, know exactly what we were talking about, but I mean, they still had valuable inputs. But what we talked about were things that people were passionate about, problems that they wanted to solve, how they wanted to get involved. It wasn't like, hey, what are you up to this weekend? Or how was that soccer game? It was talking about things that were actually making a difference. And that was fascinating to me, that you all just came together and talked about real things over real food.
Shocking. It's shocking.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's shocking, but it seems to be for a lot of people.
Well, I think we're naturally deep, We're naturally
deep into something.
People.
That's right.
It's deeper
Speak
around
for
here.
yourself, Jay. Well, the other thing I think has been fun to watch with your connections with us is how nature has impacted your life very differently since you came to be with us.
Yeah, I'd say the very first day or two you were here, you were very focused on snakes.
Oh, yeah.
And are you still focused on snakes?
No, I don't really mind the snakes.
Yeah, or even think about them much?
No, not really.
But the other thing you said that was really funny was within an hour you said, do those dogs go everywhere with you? How do they know how to go everywhere with you? And you were just like, wow.
Yeah, well, I grew up without any pets or really any animals at all. Some of my friends had dogs, but I mean, I didn't spend much time around animals at all. I'd always spent time around nature, so I was big into backpacking and hiking, so plants had always been around. But I remember when I showed up and you said you had 5 cats. I was like, oh my gosh, you have 5 cats? And you said, is that a lot? I was like, oh yeah, that's a lot.
She considers that a good beginning.
I know. I was like, wow. But yeah, I've really, I think, made a connection with the animals, especially the goats. I always viewed goats as, I don't know, kind of stupid animals. I don't want to be offensive, but I always thought
the goats are not a big part of our listening audience, so
oh,
don't
that's
worry
good.
about it.
But it's really surprising how intelligent they are and how human they are. From the first day that I was here, they reminded me of people because they always want what they can't have. And it's not like they'll push each other out of the way of the food dish, not because they want to eat it, but because they don't want the other goats having it. And I really thought that was interesting, how much you can learn from the goats and the cats and the dogs and just watching them go about their daily life.
I know that first day or two when I called one of the goats to come because I wanted to do something with her, and you're like, they know their name?
Yes.
I was like, yep, they all know their names. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing that we were talking about a little bit, but I think would be good to kind of clarify is talk about how you've been eating differently and how does that work in life as far as planning and, you know, how it feels to have control over your food.
Well, yeah, that's like you said. For me, I love having control over my food and knowing that what I'm eating, if I don't know where it comes from, I at least know that it comes from a plant probably. But yeah, that's really been big. And like I said, going this past week and eating differently than the other people who eat, they all seem to be exhausted a lot of the time. And yeah, nobody really got good sleep, but I was full of energy and I had no trouble staying awake and I felt great.
But you had planned out a menu
yeah,
for yourself.
So I ate a lot differently than the people that were there. But yeah, it was great fun planning a menu and knowing what I was going to eat and having control over really how I was going to feel.
Well, the other thing I think too is planning is a big part of what we do in our life at living sustainably, because otherwise we get caught up in our culture, which is about consumption and maybe not eating healthy and things like that. But it also involves work and play and spiritual practice, and I wonder what you might say about how that's influenced you in some way.
Well, I was going to add in there with the work thing and see if you relate the same way. A lot of times when you're working in the quote-unquote real world, you know, you don't see a tangible result of your efforts. You see, you know, you put in your 9 to 5 and you get your check and you wonder, did you accomplish anything? You move papers from one pile to another. But I feel like at Blue Rock Station or in this lifestyle we've adopted, you can physically see the results of your efforts. And are you getting that sense of that as well? I mean, I'm leading you on in there because when your mother came to visit, you're like, oh, I built this bench and I did this. And so.
Well, a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and seeing it, you know, feeling it viscerally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I enjoy being able to start a project and finish a project. And I did the whole thing. I mean, yeah, you all helped me very much. But a lot of, like you said, working in the quote-unquote real world is you're just this one little piece of a giant project, and you really don't know if what you're doing is making a difference. But here I can see I built a bench. I see the dogs sitting on the bench. I see people sitting on the bench. I know it's made a difference. I remember when it wasn't there, and now I can see that it's there. Yeah, I do enjoy being able to watch a project go from beginning to end and knowing that I was the one who really made it happen.
Well, we don't get to have that all the time. We have to find those those
Yeah.
moments, and that's what planning is. But it's also about working at things that we get a sense of accomplishment from, rather than just working for a paycheck.
And sometimes you build the bench and then it breaks, and then
Yeah.
you got to fix the bench, and then it breaks again, and then you got to fix that same old bench again for the fourth time. Which
Well,
is
we try not to do that with interns. We try to come up with things that are going to
no, that's
be
only,
success.
and that's a comment on my quality of construction.
Okay, there
as
we go.
opposed to-
Yes, okay.
Well, Jay and I have been working on a lot of projects this summer that are kind of like behind the scenes. So we worked on the roof, and well, you can't see the roof. we spent grueling hours up there, and well, everything looks the same.
But you can see the leaks, and they're not there now.
Well, you can't see the leaks,
so
which
every
is good.
day we're ready. We're ready
We're
to dance.
aware of it, but to the average
Exactly.
observer, it's sort of like adding substance, adding something to this thing. But you're right. This has been the summer of shoring things up.
Yeah.
Not making great leaps that are visually apparent.
Yep.
So in your summer experience here that you've had, all aspects of it, how's that going to change you? Because you're going to leave this cocoon that's known as Blue Rock Station. You're going to
Yes,
go back
sadly.
into now you're entering kind of a cocoon of the University of Dayton.
We
So
call
you're
it a
not-
bubble.
You're not in the real world yet.
Yeah.
But you're transitioning. So how
Bubble
is
is very different from a cocoon.
yeah.
Yeah.
But how is this going to change what you do, how you react in this new bubble that you're entering into?
Yes. Well, one thing is going to be how I think. So thinking and analyzing, not necessarily numbers per se, which I'll be doing plenty of, but things that professors and my friends and even I say. So not taking what my professors say for granted just because they have a degree, but really, asking them, well, why do you think that, or why is that the way that is? And same with my friends and even myself, asking myself, well, I have this belief and I have this thought, but why do I think that way? What's the factor behind that? And is there another way of thinking that I could possibly adopt?
Well, I think that's great, because one of the challenges that people have when they leave is that they have to go back into the culture. And so how do we take that with us and say this is our new code that we live by, and how do we
Yeah.
translate that?
Well,
And-
I would hope, because you're going into engineering, and we started on this about sustainable engineering.
Yeah.
And I guess what I would hope that you take away from this, because engineering is very factor oriented, as you said, data driven. I'm going to make changes to try and adjust the outcome of this one thing in this system without really looking at the whole picture. Not only does it make this thing work better, but how does it affect the surrounding community, the quality
Yeah.
of life, the ability for leisure? There's a bunch of different impacts.
Yeah.
And you're going to be the designer and the decider, so you can be the pioneer and the revolutionary, and that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you've been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke. We want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us, and thank Nicholas Anderson for spending a little bit of time with us today. And as your grandmother hopefully, probably, assuredly told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is?
Play nice with others, Jay. Clean up your own mess, and for heaven's sake, you keep eating those vegetables.
All right, until next time.
Will sing and her children will be Come out, see the morning glory blossom in the night. Know the stars are dancing in the twilight. Soon we'll be together, all will be revealed. Mother Earth will sing and her children will be
You can find more information on living sustainably in our unsustainable world at BlueRockStation.com.